What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. What the heck? I sounded like Rich Lux. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be doing something that a lot of you guys are probably have already seen a few of these already because of the controversy behind it all. But I still want to give you guys my thoughts and opinions on something that has been very highly anticipated for good and bad reasons. And if you guys don't already know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to be sharing with you guys my thoughts and opinions on the Morphe x Jaclyn Hill Volt collection. I'm so excited for this collection. Just to give you guys a little bit of backstory before I give you guys my thoughts and opinions on these 4 eyeshadow palettes. I think in June, Jaclyn and Morphe announced that they were doing yet again another collaboration, and we saw some sneak peeks of these palettes, and then we also saw some swatches and whatnot, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, is it her own collection? Is it her own collection? Just to find out that she was coming out with the Volt collection. Basically, these are shades that didn't make it to the Jaclyn Hill palette, which is this big guy here. So it looks like this. So it's basically the shades that didn't make it onto here that she still wanted to release but just wasn't able to fit them all because this is 35 eyeshadows, and if we were to include everything it'd be like 100 eyeshadow palette. Even though that sounds great, imagine how big that thing would be and how massive they would be, especially with the full size that these eyeshadows are. She released it, and then she released the launch date. Everybody was so excited, and then I think 2 weeks before the launch, they basically sent them out to influencers who were on their PR list, and they gave their reviews and thoughts on it, and some were good, but some were really bad. They were getting a lot of backlash that the palettes just were inconsistent, they were patchy, they were blotchy, and it wasn't good. So Jaclyn, being the person that she is, a little backstory. So I don't know if you guys remember when the Jaclyn Hill face palette came out a few years ago, but this was a collaboration that she did with Becca, and she also did an eyeshadow palette where she got to create one of the eyeshadows, and it was like a 5-pan eyeshadow palette. And basically what happened was there was some inconsistency with that as well, and the reason why was because they were trying to produce so much, and Becca decided to send it out to someone else, go ahead and finish the production of it, and those people basically messed it up. So some people got really good palettes, but some people got really horrible palettes. So basically they did the same thing that they did with the original Volt palettes, which was they recalled them, they took them back, and they refunded people their money, and those palettes were never to be seen ever again. So they never reformulated them, they never did anything about it, they basically just took an L. The same thing basically happens with the Volt palette. She saw that there was bad reviews on it, that they were patchy, they were inconsistent, and she's like, what the heck, why is this happening? My eyeshadows are fine. So there was just a huge inconsistency within all of the eyeshadow palettes. So people were having a lot of thoughts whether if they were reformulated or was it repressed. So I did some research for you guys so that way you guys don't have to worry about it. I'm not exactly sure on the whole repressed thing. I do believe that they were repressed because they're not super loose and powdery like the other ones were supposedly. They have been completely reformulated. On the screen, I'm going to go ahead and post for you guys the list of the original Jaclyn Hill palette ingredients for you guys. And as you guys can see, it has a really short ingredient list, and then that it has this little area that says may contain all of these ingredients that I cannot say. These are what the ingredients that were in the main one. I have the boxes here of 2 of the eyeshadow palettes that I am written all over, and as you guys can see, one of the first things I noticed was basically what they did was they, I guess, reformulated the eyeshadows, and then they reused the same uni carton, so that way I guess they're not wasting too much money and they can produce this a lot faster for us, so that way we can get the actual item. So there was a sticker over the batch number here down on the bottom. It says V2, which means version 2. So it's basically the second production of this eyeshadow palette. And then there was also a little sticker that was covering up the original ingredients here. So as you guys can see in my horrible chicken scratch handwriting as I was doing my research for you guys. So as you guys can see in the first list of ingredients, which is the Jaclyn Hill palette, those ingredients look almost identical to the ingredients in the Volt collection, with one exception. One of the ingredients that is not listed on there is kaolin. Kaolin is basically a clay that helps to absorb oils. Then decided, well, I'm gonna look into this and see what's going on here. So over here, and this is a bunch more chicken scratch, on the updated list of ingredients, and this is how I noticed that they must have reformulated because the ingredients are totally different. There's a few that are very similar, but a lot of the ingredients are very different. And you can also see that the ingredients are kind of in different orders, and a lot of the ingredients that are in the area that says may contain so and so ingredients, a lot of those ingredients are in the new updated formula, and they're not under the may contain. And I don't really know why it says may contain. Like, what does that mean? Does it mean that it possibly contains it or that it possibly doesn't? Like, that's just kind of confusing to me. I don't know, maybe that means that some shades contain this while other shades don't. That's what I'm kind of assuming that it means, because if you've ever seen like the Anastasia Beverly Hills ones, they'll list out all of the shade names and then say, oh, these contain this, but these don't contain this. And then my other question is, you already had the ingredients exactly the same as your original Jaclyn Hill palette, but then you're gonna go ahead and instead of just putting the kaolin back into the ingredients, you're just gonna go ahead and do a whole new conglomeration of eyeshadows. That's kind of like what is throwing me off here, is like, why don't you just make it the same exact formula as your original Jaclyn Hill palette? Because that's what everybody loved. Everybody loved the original Jaclyn Hill palette. So this kind of makes me feel like a Subculture moment all over again, where Modern Renaissance had a whole entire list of epically long ingredients while Subculture had like 5 ingredients per shadow. It kind of feels like a Subculture issue all over again. And even like the complaints that people are having with the Jaclyn Hill Vault collection are basically the same complaints that people had with the Subculture palette, but I think the Subculture was like on another level, because those, honestly, I love that palette so much. The colors are gorgeous, but you have to know how to work with them. They're so pigmented, they're so loose, so powdery. It's basically like as if someone took loose powder and pressed them into an eyeshadow pan with their finger, is the consistency of a lot of those shades. Not throwing any shade at Anastasia Beverly Hills, because I absolutely love them. That palette is a little difficult to work with. Sometimes I do find myself blending for a little longer than I want to, so I have to decide, do I really want to spend a lot of time blending these eyeshadows, or am I just going to go ahead and use a different eyeshadow palette? That is the whole tea with the ingredients. So let's get into what you guys came here for. My thoughts and opinions on the Vote collection. So I'm so excited for the Vote collection. These eyeshadows are absolutely stunning. I want to hold all of them up at the same exact time, but what I'm gonna just do is insert a picture of all of them right here for you guys, because me trying to hold up 4 eyeshadow palettes, it's gonna not end so well, because if you know anything about me, I'm the clumsiest person on earth. I personally didn't have too much of an issue with these eyeshadows. I will say that these eyeshadows are a lot more vibrant, a lot more intense, and a lot more pigmented than the Jaclyn Hill original palette. That palette was softer, even the color shades were softer. They blended out a lot quicker because they were so soft in color, not necessarily in formula. I find that the formula is very, very similar to one another. Some shades in these palettes, I will say, are a tiny bit blotchy when you first apply them, especially this one right here, which is probably the one that most people had all the issues with. Y con razón that they're like blotchy is because these colors, these dark blues and greens, are very hard colors to formulate. I have other eyeshadow palettes kind of have the same color tone, and they are very hard colors to formulate and make them look pigmented and blendable. And you know what, honestly, these tones kind of sorta in a very slight way resemble some of the shades from the Subculture palette from Anastasia. The shimmers are super great. They're very, very blendable. The black, guys, this black, so intense. I find that the shades are very soft and creamy to the touch. I did swatch all of them before. The shimmers are really nice and creamy as well. She does recommend that you use Fix Plus with the shimmery eyeshadows, but that's just her way of doing it. But honestly, I didn't have too bad of an issue with the shimmers. I found them to be very nice. As long as you use a flat synthetic brush, you shouldn't have any issues. But these darker colors tend to be patchy anyways. In other eyeshadow palettes that I own, I just always see a constant issue with those type of shades. Another one that kind of gave me a little bit of issues was the Armed and Gorgeous palette, which is the palette that I was most excited about, because just look at how beautiful it is. Like, it has all these pretty yellows and oranges and this freaking green here, and even this gold. I'm not a big fan of gold eyeshadows, I've told you guys this before, but the fact that this is like a really pretty yellow gold, I absolutely love it so much. And that shade I didn't have a lot of an issue with. You guys can see just how nice it is. Very, very shimmery, very pigmented. But I did have some issues like with this classified shade. But even though they do have a little bit of that patchiness to them, what I did find was that when you put another color from the eyeshadow palette on top of it, it blends it out. So even though you have that patchiness when you first apply it, you put another color on top and it just blends out so nicely. And I don't know why that is. It's just the weirdest thing. They are very, very nice and pigmented. Very, very smooth to the touch. Just those greens and those blues and all of the eyeshadow palettes were the ones that I had the most issues with. I did play around with these already, so I did do like what I call my practice looks, using every single color in the eyeshadow palettes to see how they performed and whatnot with one another. They probably aren't going to be looks that I would post, but it's more like just so I can see how they look. And then this one, of course, is a basic, super basic palette here. This is the Ring the Alarm palette. Super pretty warm tone look. A lot of people really weren't looking forward to this because it's just something that we've seen before and we're not excited about. I found all of these shades to be absolutely gorgeous. The only thing is, this is like my own personal complaint. I was excited for this eyeshadow palette when I thought this was a matte cranberry color, only to find out it's a shimmer. It's a really nice shimmer. It's almost like a satin shade, to be really honest. So I feel like you could still use it in the crease and do a really nice look with this. But this palette, like I said, doesn't really excite me. I know this sounds so crazy. I love warm tones, but I hate the Morphe 35O palette. Don't kill me for that. Don't crucify me. This is definitely better than the Morphe 35O palette, but I don't know. It just doesn't really turn my gears that much. I feel like this is like an everyday go-to eyeshadow palette. And then the last palette is the Bling Boss, and this is the purple. Of course, you guys know that I love this palette because it is purples. And I'm so excited to do a look with this for you guys. Like I said, I did play with them. The only complaint I had about this eyeshadow palette was this shade right here is so deceitful. This is the shade Berry Treasure. So as you guys can see it right there, it almost looks like if you guys have ever seen MAC's Beauty Marked, that's what this eyeshadow looks like. So it's like that blackened eyeshadow with the sparkles in it. And I hate when companies do this so much, when they make an eyeshadow look stunning and then it's really just this glitter overlay that's on top of the eyeshadow, and that's what this is. And I absolutely hate that so much because when I swatch it, even it has so much of that beautiful purple pigment. But the issue is when you go to blend out this eyeshadow. So I'm gonna swatch it right here. So when you swatch it, you guys see, like, even in the finger, it loses that pretty berryness. And then I'm just gonna like kind of rub it here on my hand so that you guys can see what it looks like when you blend it out. What the heck? I'm so deceived right now. This is not the color that I thought it was at all. It's basically like you have two black eyeshadows in different palettes. It's a great concept. I was kind of disappointed about that because I was so excited for that shade, you know, and for it to blend out and look like that, it really did upset a lot. Other than that though, I found these eyeshadows to be really, really nice. I am gonna make one little slight complaint. I do find that these darker shades here now, these are like the more berry red tones, they're a tiny bit patchy. I'm not even gonna lie, they're not as patchy as the blues, but they were a tiny bit patchy. But like I said, once I put like this Hush Hush shade on top, it blends it out so seamlessly. And I didn't find any issues with anything oxidizing, which I loved because I know that was a common complaint with the first one. I will say that the inside of this palette does get dirty really easily, although the outside is that nice shiny material that the new Jaclyn Hill palette has now. The inside is basically like that cardboard material that was in the outside of the original and even the inside of the original, and I hate that. I do love that they did put the names inside. I do love that it has a nice mirror, and it's a really, really nice mirror. It's a big, wide mirror. Like, I feel like you can turn it like this, and you can still see your whole entire face, but then you can also turn it like this, and you can still see your whole entire face. So, well, not your whole entire face, but your eyes. So, I do like that. I am going to say one more thing about these eyeshadow palettes that I wish they had, but they don't. Only one of them has it. You guys know this is a common complaint of mine, but it's not a big deal. Only this eyeshadow palette has a matte brow bone shade. The rest of them, this does not have a brow bone shade. This does not have a brow bone shade, and this does not have a brow bone shade. So like, I would have to carry all 4 of the palettes together to have a brow bone shade, and I don't like that. So that's the only like downfall about it, is like they're nice, but I feel like you have to have all 4 of them together sometimes to complete a to make a complete look. At least me personally, I know I'm being nitpicky with that. Even like an inner corner highlight, not all of these eyeshadow palettes have, like this one doesn't really have an inner corner highlight. You can use this, but it's not the best for the inner corner. This one doesn't have an inner corner highlight. It does have the matte, but it doesn't have an inner corner. This one doesn't have an inner corner highlight, and this is the only one that does, and it's this super white shade. So I guess that's the only complaint that I have, is like it doesn't have a highlight shade. I can't just travel with this palette alone. I still have to bring other things to kind of complete my look. At least me personally, this is something that bothers me. Maybe you don't care about an inner corner highlight. Maybe you don't care about brow bone highlight. Maybe you just use your cheek highlight as your highlight for everything. I don't. I use something different for all of that stuff, but that's just a little tiny complaint. So overall, I don't know obviously if they fixed this issues that they had with the old palettes, but I didn't find the same issues that they were complaining about. They didn't have any fallout. They were very pigmented. They blended very nicely, with the exceptions of the few patchy shades that I did mention to you guys. I really do love the way that these eyeshadows performed. I will say that these are not like the typical Morphe eyeshadow palettes, but it's not in a bad way either. They're just so much more intense, so much more vibrant, and I like that. I don't know if I would say that the Vault collection is beginner friendly, minus the Ring the Alarm palette, which was that warm tone one, and even that one is very intense, and it can get very intimidating really fast. Do I think it's worth the hype? Do I think that it's worth your coins? Do I think that it's a must? If you already have the original Jaclyn Hill palette, and if you found that to be hard to work with, you're not gonna like these eyeshadows at all. If you already have the original Jaclyn Hill palette, you probably don't need the whole entire Vault collection. Probably do without the Ring the Alarm palette, to be really honest. Though I will say that they are more vibrant than the shades that are in other palettes. I say get it if you want something a little bit more intense. Get it if you like darker colors, smokier colors, very vibrant colors. That is that with this. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.